So here I am in my favorite spot in Joshua Tree, getting ready to do some nighttime work. You can see behind the rocks behind me, the sky's really dark because it's all clouded over, especially from here to here. It turns out to be exactly where the Milky Way is going to be. That happens a lot. And then something else I wanted to figure out how to say is that in the stuff I write, I talk about being autistic. Didn't know that until a few years ago, but apparently my childhood friends knew it from the first moment they met me, but I just wish somebody might have told me back then, but it saved a lot of hassle. But yeah, I was diagnosed about 3 years ago because the pandemic made a lot of stuff kind of weird. Thought there might be a medical reason, turns out there was. So one of the things about being a autistic night photographer is there's not people around. So for autistic folks like me, that's comforting. Yeah, there might be coyotes around, there might be animals around, but I spent 30 years as a naturalist. I kind of understand most of what animals do, and I like animals. I kind of prefer them. They don't talk a lot, they don't have complicated emotions, they just have pretty basic things they need, and if you understand those, then you usually get along fine with them. But yeah, and so talking to a camera, we're trying to do a new storefront for the photography that I do. Autistic photography, if you look at it, it'll probably look different. It's not like that's deliberate, it's not like that's a hope, but I've been taking pictures my whole life and they always looked really crappy to me. You know, what I saw when I was out in the area like this was just brilliant. You know, I think part of autism is hypersensitivity things, and for me, I think that definitely affected vision. I think I've always been kind of hypersensitive to color and shape and light and visual texture, those kinds of things. They always just look really, really bright and sharp and piercing. And every photo I ever took of all these beautiful things I was seeing with my eyes just looked like crap. I kept doing it because part of being autistic is obsessive, being obsessive. It's in the diagnosis I had, it went on for about 3 weeks, but there was like two hours at the end, and the whole purpose of the 2 hours was, are you autistic or OCD? So there's like 95% overlap. So all the other stuff was, yep, you're this, but you could also be this. You're this, you're this, you're this, you can also be this. So in those 2 hours, and it came down to just one really basic thing that's sounds crazy to say it, but okay, I'm clinically crazy, so I can say that. If we do things repetitively and obsessively, and it's called stimming, right? When I'm nervous, I'll do this, rock back and forth, stuff like that. And also obsessive hobbies, right? That are highly detail oriented or highly complicated and boring. By every normal definition of the word, utterly boring. So museum curator, natural history, just what auto mechanic, right? Highly detail oriented. Those are like, not only are those the top list, that's the list of the 10 most important occupations for people who have autism. They gave me the list. I think it's meant for younger people trying to decide, okay, so I'm autistic, now what kind of jobs can I have that I might tolerate? But what's funny for me is I'm older, and for me it was a list of every job I've ever held. So that was a bit of a revelation. But anyway, I didn't start really studying what was wrong with my photography until about a year ago. You know, after I retired, I could finally start to think about, all right, I don't have a day-to-day job anymore. I can think about the mysteries that have upset me and bothered me my whole life. That was probably at the top of the list. Why do my photos all just look so dim and gray and washed out and just bad. So I started learning Photoshop, and I remember something. In 1978, I worked for the Big Sur Land Trust and made a lot of maps for their first conservation plan. And at the time, Big Sur Land Trust was headed up by Ansel Adams. So got to study his conservation work, got to learn some things, and I was a very, very poor amateur photographer back then, so I didn't engage in that as much. But I did read about what he said about photography, and one of the things he always said that really baffled me is it takes like a week to get a good picture, but then many months to perfect it. And he was talking about the darkroom, you know, it was back in the film days. But I never understood that. Why don't you just take the picture? What's wrong with? But now I understand, you know. When I started working with Photoshop and shooting what's called raw mode, it's like film. It's like shooting in film, the digital equivalent of film. I could sit down with that picture and begin to correct things that were wrong with it, correct overexposures, underexposures, and correct color balance, which is this whole thing you do with regular cameras where if you're in the daylight, you set it for daylight. And if you go indoors, it's going to look a funny color because fluorescent lights don't look like daylight. But behind all that color balance adjustment was suddenly the ability to change the colors away from what it was telling me was normal. But hey, I got a diagnosis. I got a letter from the doctor. I can go do things that aren't normal. It's okay. I have a license. I have a license to be abnormal. And suddenly, for the first time in 70 years, I was seeing pictures that looked like what I saw when I was there. And it was just a revelation. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. For the first time, I liked what I had done. So I know it's may imply that what I spent 70 years taking photography I didn't like. I'm sorry, 67 years taking photographs I didn't like. Well, yeah, that's kind of the definition of autism. You do things obsessively, not because it's any good, not because it worked or anybody liked it. You just do it because that makes you calm down. That thing helps you calm down. You do it again and again and again and again. And that turns out to be the diagnostic of why it's not OCD. When OCD people do things, they tend to feel bad about it. You know, looking back, when autistic people do obsessive things, it's to make them feel better, to calm them down, to make them able to function. And so for me, photography was always like that. And suddenly now, for the first time, it became something I liked. So I'm now out doing this. I'm making things that it appears other people like too. And so the whole reason I'm standing here talking to a camera and not doing a very good job of it, a bat, is that there's marketing folks that I've enlisted to help me, and they've said that a big part of selling photography is talking to people and telling the story, telling why do you take pictures, why did you take that picture, what were you looking for, why was it? So that's why I'm doing this. I know enough about film editing to be able to go back and cut out all the parts where I didn't know what to say. So I sound like I'm far more confident and intelligent than I really am. On the other hand, what I do, when I look at the pictures I do, and I look at pictures in galleries and pictures in books and pictures by other folks, I can tell that they look different. And I think I'm happy with that. And so if I'm happy with that, maybe I should be happy with just being who I am as best I can. So I can tell by looking at the camera that you can't see me anymore. You know, I think that's to my advantage. You know, I think that's why autistic people do night photography. Then nobody can see them. I may be running out of things to say. I think I've covered the basics. Anyway, thank you for listening. Bye.